The band's signature groove softened as the wave of applause rolled over Studio 6B, feeling like warm, comforting rain, settling the atmosphere. When Ellen DeGeneres walked out from the curtain, the room immediately lifted another notch. People stood without thinking, instinctively greeting a friend they felt they had known for years. She did that familiar wave, that light little shoulder bounce that always made laughter feel easy, accessible, and safe. She shook Jimmy's hand with genuine affection, and settled onto the couch with a smile that conveyed she was happy to be there, yet still retained just a tiny bit of shy humility about it all. They joked casually about the absurdity of airport pretzels, and how New York sidewalks should really come equipped with proper lane markers for pedestrians. The audience laughed instantly, easily, the way people laugh when they feel completely safe and understood. Jimmy tossed the conversation toward a clip he never actually rolled, and Ellen quickly riffed about a ridiculous sweater that seemingly attacked her in a dressing room mirror. The night felt bright, simple, and perfectly fine, following the expected cheerful script. Then Jimmy's eyes suddenly flicked toward the audience and remained fixed, refusing to come back to the conversation. He squinted slightly toward the third row, his expression shifting from amusement to quiet curiosity. I think someone out there wants to say something important?" Ellen immediately followed his focused gaze. A young man, maybe 22 years old, perhaps even younger, stood slowly halfway up his row. His shoulders were squared rigidly, like he had rehearsed the action countless times in front of a mirror, psyching himself up. He wore a plain navy thrift store jacket and gripped a small, visibly battered notebook tightly in both hands. It was the familiar kind of composition book that working comics often carried in their back pockets, worn and loved. The room's casual background noise evaporated in an instant, like someone had abruptly opened a door to a profound shared winter silence. Jimmy, his voice noticeably gentler now, leaned toward the mic. "Hey buddy, are you doing okay right now?" The young man nodded, swallowed hard, shook his head in confusion, and then nodded definitively again. Then he slowly lifted the notebook slightly higher and spoke, his voice papery and undeniably brave. I brought this specifically for Ellen." Ellen turned fully in her seat, dropping all celebrity buffer and armor. Just pure, soft, human attention focused entirely on him. "Hi," she said simply. The way she said that one word made the whole studio lean forward, intensely seeking connection. A stage manager glanced anxiously toward Jimmy. He gave the smallest, firmest nod, permitting the break in protocol. The young man stepped into the aisle, the notebook clutched tightly to the center of his chest. The band stopped playing completely, abruptly. He reached the stage, looked up at the two stars, and held out the book with both hands, as if it genuinely weighed more than simple paper. Ellen stood slowly. She descended the 2 steps to the floor, her knees deliberately bending to meet him precisely where he was standing. Up close, the notebook looked deeply tired and profoundly loved. Dog-eared corners, a dark coffee ring like a faded moon. It had lived a full, busy life, witnessing private thoughts. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ellen asked, her tone warm. "Micah," he said, the name sounding small in the vast room. "Hi, Micah." He breathed in deeply through his teeth, a quick, sharp intake of air like a practiced cue. "It was my sister's." Ellen's eyes instantly softened, the recognition of loss visible. "Was?" she asked gently. He swallowed heavily. She passed away last spring, after a long fight." He lifted the notebook slightly higher, explaining its importance. "She wrote jokes. She desperately wanted to do stand-up comedy. She watched you every single day in chemo. She called you her laugh coach and believed you could somehow hear her practicing." Ellen's famous smile tilted, fragile but still genuinely present. "I like your sister already, Micah." Micah's ensuing laugh was small, honest, and completely real. He offered the notebook more plainly now, its purpose clear. Ellen took it like fragile glass and held it against her palm, her thumb slowly stroking the stringy, worn spine. "What was her name, honey?" she asked. "Ruth," he said, and the name hung in the bright studio light like a resonant note on a piano that simply refuses to fade into silence. Ellen exhaled softly through her nose and nodded, a silent thank you addressed to an invisible, powerful presence. She glanced down at the notebook's worn cover. In messy, determined marker, Ruth's jokes. Do not read unless you're Ellen, then please read. The audience murmured softly. A gentle wave of shared tenderness and sorrow passed through the rows. She was bossy, your sister, Ellen said, smiling broadly at the written command. Micah made a quick, knowing face that clearly meant yes, absolutely. May I read some of her work? Ellen asked, gently lifting the cover open. Micah looked at the open book the way people look at the heavy doors of a sacred church. Please, Ellen. Ellen opened the notebook to the very first page. Lines of handwriting tumbled across the paper like her sister had written them on a moving, bumpy bus. Ellen read silently, then snorted suddenly, a genuine laugh escaping before she could stop herself. She put one hand over her mouth, half to hide the raw laugh, half to keep the profound feeling from escaping her control. Micah, Ellen declared, her voice filled with admiration. She's good. She is really, remarkably good. Micah's chin instantly trembled with raw, overwhelming relief. She wanted to be so badly, she never got on stage. She said, writing the jokes down was like practicing being okay in a world that wasn't. The atmosphere in the room visibly shifted. People smiled with wet eyes. Jimmy leaned heavily on his desk, wearing that specific look he only wore when the show completely ceased being a performance. Ellen turned another page. She read a line out loud, delivering the rhythm perfectly, about how hospital gowns are just silly dresses for people who've permanently given up on the utility of pockets. The audience laughed softly at first, then freer and more robustly, and something visibly loosened in Micah's tense shoulders. Ellen held up a finger, a comedian marking a perfect beat. Okay, listen to this one. Ruth, I am definitely stealing this. I'm telling you now so when you haunt me later, we have clear documentation. More laughter followed, warm enough this time to truly live in. Then, abruptly, she stopped turning pages. Her finger landed precisely on the bottom corner of the right-hand page. A single sentence, half crossed out, then rewritten, then left dangling abruptly at a comma. The handwriting was much smaller, fainter, as if she had been whispering directly to the paper itself. Ellen read it silently, her lips moving without making a sound. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet Micah's. This one's unfinished, Micah, she said, her voice dropping. Micah nodded, confirming the obvious truth. That's exactly why I brought it here. He breathed deeply, sharply. Her last night, she fell asleep before she could finish the line. I thought maybe you could finish it for her, right now, Ellen said, her voice a deep statement, not a tentative question. Micah looked simultaneously 14 and 40 years old. She would have truly loved that, more than anything. Ellen closed the notebook gently, not to end the moment, but to make the object steady and secure. She looked briefly to Jimmy, then back firmly to Micah. Come sit with me, she commanded softly. A crew member immediately brought a simple chair. Micah sat down a step below the stage, angled perfectly so he could see her hands at all times. Ellen returned to the couch but stayed perched carefully on the edge, the notebook open again, her finger resting precisely on that last dangling line. The studio audience inhaled together, collectively preparing for the emotional conclusion. Ellen cleared her throat softly. Ruth says, she began, and a soft, genuine smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. She's been profoundly thinking about how laughter truly works. She says life is just a continuous series of surprises wearing sensible, comfortable shoes. Laughter, light, and airy as wind chimes followed her words. She says the thing about being sick, Ellen continued, her eyes skimming the handwritten page, is that everybody treats you like breakable glass all the time, but all you actually want is to be a simple coffee mug, chipped maybe, a little stained with use, but permanently useful, held tightly. A profound hush fell. Okay, Ellen said, her professional tone brightened a shade. Now we are finally at the list. She wrote, I made a beautiful list of all the fun things I'm going to do when I finally get better. Number 1, eat French fries in the car with maximum enthusiasm, like a sneaky raccoon with a full driver's license. The laugh in the studio grew. Ellen held up a controlling hand. Valid goal. Number 2, tell Ellen a joke, one of mine, on television. Ellen glanced up, her eyes bright and empathetic. Ruth, we are actively working on it right now. She lowered her head. Number 3 is precisely where she stopped writing. She wrote, and if I don't get better, comma. The single devastating word hung there, suspended in the bright light. Ellen's voice deepened, gaining profound, emotional resonance. If I don't get better, she read, her voice strong, then someone has to finish this joke for me, because I hate unfinished business. No one moved at all. The cameras seemed to gently hold their breath, waiting. Ellen tapped the page twice with her finger, like a professional drummer counting in a band you couldn't quite see. Then she looked out at the audience fully. Okay, she said gently, her famous smile returning. Here is precisely what I think Ruth was going to say. She took a powerful beat. A soft half-smile returned, the kind that always has tears just waiting behind it. If I don't get better, then listen closely. You have to promise me something important. Finish the joke for me, not just this specific one, any joke you hear. Because a joke in the end is just a tiny little light you manually turn on in a massive dark room. And if I can't physically reach the switch anymore, I need you to say something incredibly silly and make everybody immediately look where the light is coming from. There was laughter, but it came deeply wrapped in the sound people make when they are profoundly surprised by the warmth of their own hearts. Ellen leaned closer to the microphone. And if you happen to worry you'll completely mess up the delivery, she continued, her eyes twinkling with shared mischief. Good, that means you were doing it exactly right. Because the only people who truly never mess up jokes are the ones who never bother to try to make anybody else feel less alone. A significant moment of silence followed the powerful words. The bandleader wiped his eyes visibly. Jimmy's hand covered his mouth, his other hand gripping the edge of the desk. Ellen closed the notebook softly on her finger. Ruth, my sweetheart, she said, looking past the lights and the cameras, you left us the perfect setup. I just brought the punchline home. But it is entirely yours. The audience didn't clap. They simply breathed, quietly, collectively. Micah's face had crumpled into raw relief. Ellen looked at him, and her smile softened into something steady and deeply maternal. She stood, stepped down again, and carefully crouched, so their eyes were perfectly level. Can I tell you something important, Micah? She asked. Micah nodded instantly, his eyes wet. You finished it, buddy, she said gently. You were the one who brought it here, through the lights and the fear. That is the hardest part of any joke ever told. He made a wet sound that was exactly half laugh, half simple apology. Ellen rested a kind hand firmly on his shoulder. Micah's hand lifted slowly to the notebook. There's one more thing, he whispered. She wrote something small on the back cover. Ellen turned the book over carefully. On the inside flap, a short final note. If Ellen reads this, make them laugh one more time. Make me brave one more time. Ellen breathed in sharply. She straightened, glanced quickly at Jimmy. He nodded. Ellen faced the audience fully. Okay, one more time, for Ruth. She read the final unwritten joke she had just completed. If I don't get better, Ellen repeated, promise me you'll do me a final favor. Every time you laugh, say my name in your head. I want to be the echo in your laughter. Silence fell instantly. Ellen closed the notebook softly. She walked it to the desk and set it down with quiet ceremony. Then she turned back to Micah and opened her arms wide. She held him until the shaking in his shoulders finally stopped. She whispered, "Thank you for courageously bringing her here." When they separated, Ellen placed the notebook carefully back into his hands. "You keep this, Micah," she said firmly. "Finish as many as you can, and when you can't, bring them back to me." Micah nodded, tears of gratitude streaming down his face. Ellen turned to the audience. "Listen," she said. "I don't know how many chances we get in this life to make each other feel brave. So this assignment is officially yours now, too. Finish a joke for Ruth this week. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be undeniably kind." The crowd didn't erupt. They stood, quietly, reverently. Jimmy came around the desk, his hand over his heart. He tried to speak twice and failed. Ellen squeezed his arm and looked back at Micah. "Hey," she said, playful again, lighter but not empty. "Do you want to help me legally steal one of your sister's jokes?" Micah laughed, a real resonant sound. "Yeah," he said. "She'd absolutely love that." Ellen leaned into the mic one last time. "Ruth," she said, her eyes bright, "we truly heard you tonight." The lights warmed further, the cameras drifted back, and for a few seconds longer than television usually allows, everyone simply stood there together. It had successfully finished the joke.